But thunder rolls, faint ocean waves, creaking of wooden masts. Narrator's voice begins low and intense. They called him Calico Jack not because of his courage, not because of his victories, but because of the flamboyant calico coats he wore like armor against the world. History painted him as a colorful rogue, a pirate who preferred charm over cannon fire, and a man more interested in wine, women, and silk than in blood and steel. But what if I told you that every story you think you know about him, every cheerful tavern tale, every romanticized legend, was a half-truth at best, and at worst, a lie crafted to bury the real man forever? The truth about Calico Jack is far darker, far more dangerous, and tonight, you will hear the finale of a story that history tried to erase. Imagine a man standing on the deck of a fragile ship, staring at a horizon where death itself is waiting. His crew restless, his enemies circling, his closest allies plotting against him, and in that moment every decision he makes will decide not only his fate, but the destiny of two of the most infamous women in pirate history, Anne Bonny and Mary Read. This is not the tale of a flamboyant rogue. This is the tale of betrayal, of hidden bargains with kings and smugglers, of loyalty shattered by greed, and of a finale so shocking that even centuries later, it still rattles those who dare to uncover it. But before we sail into this last, unspoken chapter of Calico Jack's life, before we uncover the traps he set, the secrets he carried, and the night he fell, make sure you subscribe right now, because what I'm about to reveal hasn't been told like this before, and once we start, you won't be able to turn away. Her pause. Sound of gulls crying faintly in the background. The tension rises. You see, Calico Jack wasn't born a pirate, he was born John Rackham, a man whose childhood remains hidden in shadows. No one truly knows his beginnings. Some whisper he was the son of a merchant, others claim he was abandoned as a bastard of nobility. But whatever the truth, what we do know is this: by the time he stepped into the world of piracy, he wasn't chasing gold, he was chasing recognition. Unlike Blackbeard, who carved his reputation with fire and terror, Rackham sought to be remembered for something subtler. His wit is cunning, his ability to outthink his enemies. But the sea is merciless, and men like Rackham learn quickly that dreams of recognition are paid for in blood. The young Rackham rose under the command of Charles Vane, one of the most ruthless pirates to ever stalk the Caribbean. Vane was a brutal, violent man, the kind of captain who treated mutiny and murder as tools of business. To serve under Vane was to learn fear, and Rackham learned fast. But Rackham also learned something else. Vane's brutality left cracks that could be exploited. Rackham discovered that to take down a man larger than life, you don't fight him head on. You wait, you whisper, you plan, and in 1719, when Vane failed to seize a prize ship because of his reckless cowardice, it was Rackham who rallied the crew, it was Rackham who staged the mutiny, and it was Rackham who claimed the captaincy. From that moment on, Calico Jack was born. But here's where the legend and the truth begin to split apart. The tavern songs will tell you that Jack was a pirate of charm and cleverness, but in reality, he was haunted by the knowledge that his leadership began not with glory, but with betrayal. He had cut down his own captain, and in the pirate code, such treachery never truly washes clean. And that is where the seeds of his finale were sown. Because betrayal breeds betrayal, and every step Jack took after that moment drew him closer to his own end. He turned his ship into a theater of deception, flying flags of different nations pretending to be merchants, weaving through the waters of the Bahamas and Jamaica. And yes, he won prizes, ships, cargo, silks, and wines. But more importantly, he won the attention of two figures who would change his fate forever: Anne Bonny and Mary Read. Now here's where most stories get soft, romantic, even playful. They'll tell you Jack fell for Anne, that he wooed her, that together they lived a reckless life of passion and piracy. But the truth is far sharper. Anne Bonny didn't join Jack out of love, she joined him out of necessity. She was married, trapped, and saw in Jack not a lover, but an escape. Mary Read didn't join him out of admiration either. She was already living in disguise, surviving by outwitting men who would kill her if they knew her secret. She saw in Jack an opportunity to hide in plain sight. So when history paints Jack as the flamboyant rogue who sailed with two infamous women at his side, remember this: he wasn't their master, their savior, or their hero. He was their pawn. And when the finale came, those same women would stand as the only ones willing to fight, while Jack's legacy crumbled into the sea. But that, my friends, is still ahead of us. Right now we stand at the edge of the storm. Jack has claimed his ship, won the loyalty of his crew through betrayal, and surrounded himself with allies whose loyalty was as fragile as glass. What he didn't know was that fate was already setting the trap, because in the Caribbean waters of 1720, the law was no longer blind, the navy was no longer slow, and one man's betrayal was about to echo at him like a cannon shot in the night. The sound of a single cannon firing. Here the sea grows rougher, rain taps against wooden decks, distant thunder, narrator's voice lower, urgent. Calico Jack's legend wasn't written in gold, it was written in the shadows between betrayal and survival. By the early 1720s his name carried weight across the Caribbean. But weight isn't always a blessing. A name whispered in fear draws not only merchants and smugglers, it draws hunters. Jack's biggest mistake wasn't his flamboyance. It wasn't even his reliance on deception. No, his biggest mistake was something far deadlier. He started believing his own legend. He thought he was untouchable. After deposing Charles Vane, Jack grew addicted to the role of captain. He sailed proudly, flaunting his calico coat, drinking in taverns so openly that even the walls of Nassau echoed with his laughter. But for every drink he raised, there was a spy listening. For every boast, a whisper carried back to the governors in the Royal Navy. The walls of freedom were closing in. The Caribbean was changing. Where once pirates could roam with relative ease, governors like Woodes Rogers in Nassau were cracking down. Amnesty had been offered to pirates willing to lay down their arms. Many took it, some turned informant. Suddenly, every harbor was a risk, every friendly face a potential betrayer. But Jack refused to bend. Instead he doubled down, and it was during this dangerous defiance that Anne Bonny and Mary Read became central to his story. Anne wasn't a bystander. She wasn't some pirate's mistress trailing behind. She was sharp, calculating and ruthless when she had to be. In truth, it was often Anne who pushed Jack into bold raids, her fiery spirit daring him to go further. Mary Read, on the other hand, was quieter but no less deadly. Having lived disguised as a man most of her life, she understood survival in a way Jack never did. She fought like someone who had nothing to lose because she had already lost everything once. And here's the twist most people forget. While Jack's crew began to waver, drinking too much, fighting among themselves, Anne and Mary remained the spine of the ship. It was the women who sharpened blades, who kept watch when others slept, who reminded the crew that fear and weakness were poison. Jack may have been captain in name, but the ship, his entire fragile empire rested on their shoulders. Yet even with them by his side, cracks widened. The raids grew sloppier. Ships were taken, yes, but the profits dwindled. Jack chose targets poorly, driven more by impulse than strategy. And worse still, rumors swirled that some of his crew whispered about mutiny. History repeats itself, doesn't it? The man who had once betrayed his captain now faced the same fate from his own men. But fate had something crueler in store. October 1720. The Bahamas. The governor of Jamaica had grown tired of Jack Rackham's arrogance. A warrant was issued for his capture. And unlike before, this wasn't idle paper. This was a death sentence sealed in ink. While Jack reveled in stolen wine on the deck of his sloop Revenge, Royal Navy forces began to circle. But before the Navy's trap sprung, there was one final spark of Jack's cunning, the kind of move that reminded everyone why he had survived as long as he did. He began spreading false signals. Using captured flags, he disguised the Revenge as a Spanish trader, then as a harmless fisherman. For weeks he slipped between islands, dodging pursuers like a shadow at sea. It worked at first, but every game of deception has an expiration date, and Jack's time was running out. Anne noticed it first. She told him, "You can't outrun the storm forever." Mary agreed. Both women urged him to plan, to retreat, to think like he once had under Vane. But Jack was deafened by his own pride. He told them he would not hide, he would not run. And that pride would be the blade that cut his throat. The night of October 22, 1720 was deceptively quiet, too quiet. Jack's crew was drunk, celebrating another small capture. Laughter echoed across the water. But in the distance, in the blackness of the sea, sails were shifting silently. The Royal Navy was coming, led by Captain Jonathan Barnett, a seasoned hunter of pirates. The Navy had tracked Jack's every move. Guided by informants, fueled by relentless determination, Barnett had one goal: to make an example out of Calico Jack Rackham. But Jack didn't know. Not yet. On his deck he laughed, his calico coat swaying in the moonlight, Anne and Mary watching with grim silence. They knew. Women's intuition, maybe. Or maybe they had simply survived long enough to recognize the quiet before death. And as midnight approached, a shadow loomed from the dark. Barnett's ship closed in, silent as a knife in the dark, ready to carve history with fire and iron. The trap had been set, the finale was beginning. What happened next would not only end Calico Jack's story, but immortalize Anne Bonny and Mary Read forever. Hear the sound of creaking timbers and cannon fuses hissing fills the silence. Her scene begins with silence, then suddenly the thunderous boom of cannon fire splitting the night. The silence shattered. A flash of fire ripped across the dark sea as Captain Jonathan Barnett's ship unleashed its opening volley. Splinters of wood exploded from the Revenge's deck, pirates stumbled from their drunken haze, and the final hour of Calico Jack Rackham had begun. The crew scrambled. Some grabbed muskets, others swords, but most were too drunk to stand. The air filled with smoke, shouts, the crash of cannonballs tearing through sails. But here's the truth you won't find in the romanticized tales. Calico Jack did not rise to the occasion. He faltered. As Barnett's men boarded, cutlasses flashing in the moonlight, Jack was paralyzed, not by fear of death but by the crushing realization that his legend was over. He had built his fame on flair, on illusion, on flamboyance, but illusions don't stop steel. And so it was Anne Bonny and Mary Read who fought like lions. The two women, surrounded by chaos, brandished pistols and blades with a fury that shocked even Barnett's hardened sailors. They slashed, fired, screamed curses into the smoke-filled night, standing shoulder to shoulder while men twice their size fell at their feet. Witnesses later said it was as if the women were possessed, fighting not just for survival, but to carve their names into history with blood. Anne's hair, wild and loose, caught the light of the fire. Mary, disguised in men's clothing, fought with a precision that cut through the drunken panic of Jack's crew. While men fled below deck, the women held the line above it, and Jack cowered. Hidden in the shadows, he did not charge, he did not roar, he did not rally his crew, he hid. It was Anne herself who screamed the words that would echo for centuries. "If you had fought like a man, you needn't be hanged like a dog." Her voice tore through the night louder than the cannons, louder than the chaos. And in that moment, the truth was revealed. The fearless Calico Jack was a mask torn away by the courage of two women who refused to surrender. The battle ended swiftly after that. The Revenge was overrun, her crew dragged in chains onto Barnett's ship. The sea that once carried freedom now carried silence. In Spanish Town, Jamaica, trials awaited. The verdict was inevitable: guilty. The sentence, death by hanging. One by one, the men were condemned. Jack Rackham, the once feared, once envied, once celebrated Calico Jack, stood before the gallows with his calico coat still draped around his shoulders. But here is the part most people never hear. In his final days, Jack begged to see Anne. And Anne did not to comfort him, not to cry for him. She stood cold, unflinching. Her words cut deeper than any blade. "I'm sorry to see you here, Jack. But if you had fought like a man, you wouldn't have to die like a dog." The same words she had screamed during battle, repeated at the foot of the gallows. And with that, Calico Jack Rackham was hanged in November of 1720. His body displayed in chains at Deadman's Quay, a warning to all who dreamed of piracy. His calico flag, once a symbol of flamboyant rebellion, fluttered one last time before being torn down. But Anne Bonny and Mary Read, their stories lived on. Both women pleaded their bellies, claiming pregnancy to delay execution. It worked. Mary tragically would die in prison months later. Anne's fate remains a mystery. Some say she escaped, others that her wealthy father secured her release. But whatever truth lies buried, her legend burned brighter than Jack's. Because history remembers courage. It remembers the ones who fought, not the ones who hid. And so, Calico Jack Rackham's untold finale is this: he was not the fearless pirate of tavern songs, not the untouchable rogue of legends. He was a man who built an image, and when the storm came, it was that image, not his courage, that stood on trial. Anne Bonny and Mary Read carried the fire of rebellion into the annals of history, while Jack's name became a warning. A warning that legends built on vanity cannot survive the storm. But now, you know the truth behind the mask. The question is, will you remember the pirate, or the women who showed the world what true defiance looks like? Soft echo of chains clinking, then fading waves. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe. Because every week, we bring you closer to the stories buried in history's shadows, the ones too raw, too real, and too powerful to be forgotten. Hit that button and together, let's keep the legends alive.